All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tom Dabertin in the morning call. It is Wednesday, and you're listening to WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM in Hammond, Indiana. And glad to be with you again this morning. We'll be here until 8 a.m., and then we have the Munster Chamber of Commerce show. And then I think followed by, will we be coming back? I think we come back at 8:30, correct, Lynette? And then we at 9 o'clock is the School City of Hammond show, or is the School City of Hammond show moved to 8:30 now? And I don't think you're on. Lynette, I can't hear you.
Sorry, my bad. I think it will be moved to 8:30.
Oh, okay, good. So this will be a short day. At 7:30, Phil Kazaya, a friend of mine who's a retired Hammond police officer, is going to call in and talk about a play that he's involved in. Of course, Phil Kazaya, the dancing, performing police officer for many years. I don't think you've ever met him, have you?
I don't think so.
He has an amazing story of how he got involved in community theater, and he'll be on about 7:30. He's going to call in. But otherwise, we're here to take your calls. But let's look at traffic and weather
If you
together.
could, real quick, Tom,
Yes.
move your camera more down.
Move it down? Sure.
Yes.
How is that?
Perfect.
All right. Very good. Sorry about that. Um, but before we go to any calls or any discussion, let's do traffic and weather together. Let's start out with traffic. Traffic this morning doesn't look bad right now. A little bit of a backup, normal backup on the Dan Ryan, 8094, I-65, Klein Avenue, the toll road going into Illinois, the Bishop Ford, the Chicago Skyway all look pretty decent right now. So 294 is in great shape all the way up to O'Hare. There's some traffic over on the Kennedy, the Eisenhower, and the Stevenson. But again, coming from Northwest Indiana, probably the only spot that you're going to have some traffic is a buildup around 33rd going into the Circle Interchange on the Dan Ryan. And with that, I guess if you're watching online, you can tell that it's a little bit cooler out, a little more crisp because Lynette is wearing a sweater this morning. So there's the indicator of the weather. There you go. Go ahead, Lynette.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 58 degrees with highs of 62 and lows of 52. We'll be having a shower in spots this morning, otherwise clouds yielding to some sun, and tonight should be mostly cloudy. Tomorrow, on Thursday, we'll be having highs of 69 and lows of 54, with some clouds breaking for some sun. And then Friday, we'll be having highs of 75 and lows of 59. Should be breezy and warm with clouds, followed by a brightening sky.
So not weather yet that it's time to turn on the heat. It's just time to wear an extra layer and enjoy the fall weather. Before you know it, it'll get very cold, and we'll be talking about our heating bills in NIPSCO. Lots going on in the news this morning, but we have a caller, so we always take the callers first. So we'll go right to the caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'm not getting a signal on my radio. Any problems?
Lynette, can you
Yes,
answer that?
we've been trying to fix that.
Okay, so we're trying to work on that.
Okay.
So you can hear us on the TuneIn app. You can hear us on YouTube
Oh, okay.
Live. You can hear us on JED TV. So we're just having problems on the radio side.
Okay, well, let's proceed then. And this is an item for all the wine drinkers out there. They're falling down on the job. This is an item out of the latest edition of the Week magazine. And it says global wine consumption last year was the lowest it's been since 1961, dropping 3.3% to 214 million hectoliters, according to the International Organization of Vine and Wine. Are you a wine drinker?
No, I'm not, and I'll tell you why. I don't know what it is about wine, but if I drink wine, my upper lip literally flips over. I can't drink it. It doesn't agree with me, never has. And for some reason, I've stayed away from wine all these years, and don't feel like I've missed out on anything. But I've tried it before, and people say, "Well, just take a taste," and they'll stand there and they'll watch, and you'll see my upper lip start to quiver and move up, and it's like, nope, no, thank you. So I'm not a wine drinker. I do find it very interesting that you have people who, of course, are these experts, these connoisseurs in wine, and they know they know great details. They can take a sip of wine and know where it's from and know that it's from grapes in France versus grapes in California or in somewhere else in the United States, like in Michigan. So I find it very amazing that people have such accentuated
Almost like a
taste
religion.
that they can find it. I'm sorry?
It's almost like a religion for them.
It is, and they know so much about it. And I used to think that one person that I knew, I thought that she was just putting on airs when she would taste wine, and then I found out years later that she was such an expert that she could literally tell the taste of wine by the taste of wine where it was from. And I thought that's impossible, but I
Hmm.
guess there are differences. How about you, Walt? Do you drink wine?
No, no. For one thing, once I started taking meds back in my mid 40s, I was advised by the nurses, don't drink alcohol because it will adversely affect the effects of the medicine. I wasn't much of a drinker in the first place, so it was not a difficult task to just not drink alcohol at all.
Well, let me ask you. You're of course you're a veteran. You're a very well-spoken, well-read individual. What do you make first off of the peace truce in Gaza? What do you make of that?
Well, it's a step one, but it's in a part of the world where there are ancient hostilities that they're not inclined to give it up, and getting Muslims very love lost. Go back to the 1500s, 1600s in Europe, and relations between the Protestants and the Catholics, and then there was conflicts within the Protestant groups and so forth. So the level of hostility. I mean, then you have the Arabs and the Persians. Iranians are not Arabs; they're Persians, and
Right.
there's not much. There's not much love lost between the Persians and the Arabs. Turkey,
I
they're
I've,
Turks; they're
I've
not Arabs.
I don't know if you saw the article this morning, but Reuters is reporting that Putin is canceling his Arab summit because only two leaders were willing to attend his summit, and they said that this shows that the uh, how much how much influence the Russians have lost in recent years in the Middle East. A few years
Hmm.
ago, of course, the Russians had a lot of influence, especially with
Right,
Syria and with
right,
other countries, and they said this is actually a good sign because the Russians, of course, had worked very diligently over the years to create upheaval and undermine peace in the Middle East, and so they've lost their influence. So that might be a good sign. I agree with you. I think this is a long, long road. It's great that there's a truce, but that's all it is, and it's a fragile truce, and it wouldn't take much
right.
to undo what's been done. But you have to give credit where credit is due, and it's a start. Closer to home, I'm really becoming more and more troubled by some of the things that are going on, especially on social media, as it relates to this whole immigration issue. And I don't know how much time you spend on social media. I'm
None.
trying to, well, I'm trying to reduce my involvement, to be very honest with you, because of some of the posts that are out there. But
No.
it's as if one side is feeding into the other. And there's so much misinformation, and there's so much conjecture, and there's so much hostility that's being posted. People are jumping to conclusions before they know the details. They're posting information that's just totally false. They're also posting a lot of very inflammatory information. Look,
Sure.
if if your family is affected by the crackdown on immigration, I understand how you feel, and I understand how your concerns. And people are just downright mean. I mean, there are people who've taken to social media and said, look, I'm worried. I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about what's going on, and they have a legitimate right to say that they're worried. And instead of seeing, a Christian response of, well, don't worry, or, everything will be all right, or saying, things always work out. It's like, well, you shouldn't be here in the first place. And, the one person said, well, I'm here. I'm an American citizen. And they said, well, I couldn't tell with your name. That's the type of stuff that worries me. We're jumping to conclusion too fast. We're going to start judging people by their surnames. I think that's wrong, and it bothers me. I think that all sides basically deserve the blame. I think the Trump administration certainly was elected to have a crackdown on immigration, but some of the tactics have been wrong, and I also think that some of the tactics of local officials, especially in Chicago and in Illinois, have been absolutely reprehensible. So I think everybody kind of deserves each other, and I think his name is Ray Lopez. He's a an alderman in Chicago, who said, you all deserve what's happening. You all have a role in the problems that are occurring right now. And I have to agree with him. I think it's problematic, and it's unfortunate. It's concerning.
Let's get into one point, though. The ICE officials, they are enforcing the law of the land. Now, if the Democrats don't like that law, then they should speak up and say, we are opposed to immigration restrictions. We want an open border, and so, okay, go ahead. See whether you get the support of the American people and enough support that you can get that through Congress. But the simple truth is, they're enforcing the law of the land, and I think it was despicable what the mayors of Hammond and East Chicago making a big fuss over ICE presence here. In Hammond, it was because they were using the parking lot. That kind of stuff puts us all in risk, because
let me back up, because in East Chicago, the mayor said that he was aware that they used a public parking lot. He didn't. He said that he wasn't supporting them personally, but he said they had the right to use a public parking lot. So I don't think you can really fault what he had to say. He's entitled to his own opinion, but he said that they had the right to use a public parking lot. In Hammond, Mayor McDermott said that they couldn't use the City Hall parking lot. So there's a little difference and distinction between what happened in Hammond and East Chicago.
Well, I mean, to me, the mayors of those cities should be backing law enforcement, because we have a major problem, and we're having all kinds of people coming over from Illinois, and all of a sudden we need some federal backing. Do you think with Trump in the White House, he's going to say okie dokie? He's going to say screw you? I mean,
he's clearly shown that he responds to politics, and I think that's a little unfortunate, because he said he was going to rule with success, and he's had a lot of successes, and I think some of his political antics actually diminish his successes. But I will tell you that I've reached out to Todd Rokita, the Attorney General of the state of Indiana, and Todd has agreed to come on the show. Probably won't be until November now, unfortunately, because there's been such a demand for his time. He said that he's literally got his mornings booked for the next couple of weeks. So he's probably going to come on in November to address some of the issues that you're talking about. Since the Attorney General serves as the top law enforcement officer and the top legal officer of the state of Indiana, I think his comments will be very valuable for people to hear, but he won't be able to come on for a few weeks.
Despite Trump's many successes, 90% of the press coverage of Trump is negative. Not surprisingly, 90% of the media personnel are liberal Democrats. Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't think so.
And I don't think it's a coincidence, but I do think that once again, if I were Donald Trump, I would not play into some of the games that they play into. I think that picking a fight with the news media is just a waste of time. The legacy media, of course, has lost significant ground. And is it necessary to hold those kinds of arguments? I mean, is it necessary to say, oh, you're with fake ABC News. Okay. Is that really necessary? Just don't call on the person. Why make the comment? Why take them on? All that happens is ABC plays the sound bite of him saying fake ABC News. Fox plays the same sound bite. And it doesn't, to me, it looks childish. And I think it's just wrong. I think that the president needs to act presidential at times. And I think that's one problem with Donald Trump. He doesn't. He talks too much. He says too much sometimes. He really needs to buy a roll of duct tape, and keep quiet. And especially when it comes to the news media, if we're all convinced that the news media has no influence, then why are we picking a fight?
Well, he just doesn't. His reaction is, "You hit me, I'm going to hit you twice." And they consider that the media covered for Biden. The man was totally unfit to be the president. Because of his presence in the White House, Putin probably invaded Ukraine. And but the press, they like to say that they're the they're the guardrails, and their job is to keep government real and honest and so forth. They covered for Biden.
Well, you're
Why
right
would
about
anybody
that, but
respect them?
Walt, you brought this up before. You'd mentioned that you largely look at news media reports, I think from the BBC, Reuters. You'd mentioned
All of
some
them,
European, yes, and I agree
Asia.
with you. I think those news sources are more reliable on what's going on in the United States than our own news media lately, which is disturbing. And I agree. They covered for Biden. It was a complete unraveling of the trust that the American people had in the news media. The problem is, you can go on this morning, you can go on to social media, and you can find so many phony news stories. And I keep on commenting when friends post these news stories on both sides of the aisle. I've got friends that are very liberal, I've got friends that are very conservative, and they post all these news stories. And these news stories are so fictitious and so false, that it's just mind-boggling. And what you're doing basically is you're reposting information that most likely was planted by the Russians or the Chinese.
Well, when you have a media that is so disreputable, and when I was in the military and we were deployed to Indochina, the media, the New York Times, was carrying a series of reports out of. They sent a guy by the name of Harrison Salisbury, who was a notorious pro-communist type, and he was They were peddling the lie that we were purposely attacking civilian areas. Total rubbish. And as it turns out, I was in the officer's dining area, and I sat down, and there was a civilian guy, and I assumed he was what we call a tech rep from one of the weapons manufacturers that was present to be advisor. Turns out he was a wire service guy out of Saigon, and I immediately said to him, all this crap about us bombing civilian areas is total nonsense. If you're talking about the Second World War, yeah, they purposely bombed civilian areas, but not now. He didn't even try to deny it. And what was his response? He said, the American military in Indochina is the moral equivalent of the Hessians during the American War for Revolution, American War for Independence from the British. That was the character of the media. And then as a volunteer at the National Vietnam Veterans Arms Museum, when it was still in downtown Chicago, I met people who were served in Vietnam as privates to colonels. Every one of them told me that if they had any contact with the media, they felt that the media's sympathies were with the communists. That's the kind of media we have here, and it's been a disaster because there are those, because the media doesn't respect telling the truth consistently, performing as journalists, not propagandists for the left wing of the Democrat Party. They get permission for the most extreme elements to just peddle their crap.
Well, and again, I agree with you. I think there's been a loss of credibility And I'm not sure that the news media will ever regain that credibility. And it's unfortunate because I also worry about where people get their news from. Where are they getting their information from?
Right.
There's so much misinformation that's out there. Again, I look even on non-hard news subjects. You can go on and you can find information right now that on social media and elsewhere that's floating around that's just so false and so made up and so contrived
Yes.
that I worry about the future of this nation and society in general because they're hearing information that's just not true. And if you don't have any reputable sources, then it means everything's fair game. And when everything's fair game, you've got a lot of people that are misinformed, and that's sad. Hey, Walt, thanks so much for calling. 845-1100 is the number to call. I think we're ready for a break, correct, Lynette? Yep, we're ready for a break. So it's the morning call with Tom Dabertin on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. And Lynette, did we get the radio problem fixed? Are you there?
Sorry, Tom. No, we did not get it fixed yet.
Okay, no problem. No problem. I just point out to people that are listening on other sources, I'm being told YouTube is working fine.
Yes.
People are listening on the TuneIn app. So there's people that are hearing us, but they're all texting me and asking me what's going on. So we're still working on it.
Yes,
So
Jim is
just
here trying to fix it right now.
yes, Jed's here. So those of you who like to pick on Jed for not getting up early, he's here bright and early. He's working on it. Let me ask you a question, Lynette. While we're working through this, if I can, where do you where do you get your news from? You're a different generation than me. So where do you get your news from?
Sorry, Jim was speaking to me.
No problem. Where do you get your news from? You're a totally different generation than myself. How do you find out about information? Where do you get it from?
I usually go onto the Google app, mobile app, and it shows me news there. Or I'll be honest, I do get most of my news from TikTok.
Okay. And my question is, how much trust do you put in those sources?
I have a fair amount of trust. I think I a lot of people from my generation have a good eye of pointing out fake news, what's real and what's not, what's biased and what isn't.
Because I'm so fearful that there's so many generations between your generation and my generation that aren't able to discern what's true and what's false. I have a friend from Whiting, and she posted the other day a story that was just so reprehensibly false, that I pointed out to her. I said, this has been debunked several times. And she said, but how do you know it's not true? It keeps on popping up. And it's like, well, it's the same argument that I've heard since 1969 that we didn't really walk on the moon. And there are still people, as I've said before, about 5 million people in the United States who don't believe that we ever went to the moon. Nonsense. And it's frightening that the numbers of people that believe all this stuff these days. So it's scary. But again, 845-1100 is the number to call if you'd like to call in this morning. We're having problems on the radio side. We're working on it. So, you can listen to us online. However, Jet TV is working fine. And of course, YouTube Live is working fine. So we're going to be here until 8 o'clock. And in the meantime, at 7 a.m., so about a half hour from now, Phil Kazaya, a friend of mine who is a now retired Hammond police officer, is going to call in and talk about his latest involvement in a production. And he, over the years, I've told this story before. He got involved, and he in community theater, and he's been involved in a number of community theater productions throughout Northwest Indiana, and he's going to talk about his newest one. And it's kind of fun because people would see this big burly cop. Phil looks like a cop. He has that natural look like he'd be a police officer. And at the same time, here is this guy that you would see in local community theater up on stage dancing and telling jokes and doing pratfalls and doing all these crazy things. And it was like it just was very, very kind of an alter ego, if you will. So that'll be at 7 o'clock. In the news, as I said during Walt's conversation, I'm troubled by all the false information that's going on, including with the stories about ICE and these roundups. ICE is still claiming, at least, that they're focused on primarily criminal element, and that's their focus. And the two individuals on the east side yesterday, from a number of sources now, say that they were wanted individuals. They were members of a Venezuelan gang. And right away, though, there was a lot of conjecture and a lot of falsehoods that came out about that stop. At the same time, I think ICE is doing themselves a disservice because they're not making that connection with the general public. They look like they're military. They don't look like they're there to enforce the law. It doesn't look natural, and I think it's posing a problem. I really do. I think that it's at times overkill. I understand they have to protect themselves, and they've been spat on. They've had things thrown at them. They've had all kinds of attacks. There have been threats against them, and I realize that. But I just think that because of the lack of cooperation from local law enforcement in Illinois, they have resorted to tactics that basically don't help the message that they're trying to send. And I think most people agree that we don't want criminal element in this country. If they're here illegally, we should get rid of them. But I have to say, ICE almost is playing into the hands of that criminal element right now, because I think the general public is a little perturbed and a little upset by what they're seeing, and it's not helping. So if you have an opinion, give us a call at 845-1100. Again, we're having some problems with the radio. We're aware of it. We're still working on it. And Lynette's going to tell me when it's fixed.
It should be fixed right now, actually.
All right. Well, there you go. So good morning. If you're listening on the radio, you can now hear us. We had a little problem for the first half hour with the radio, but it's been fixed. Jed came in, and I give a shout out to Matt as well. I think he was helping as well.
Yes.
And Lynette, of course, is here, and so we've got it fixed, folks. So if you want to listen on the radio, we're back on 845-1100. Again. The question this morning is, one, where do you get your news from? And number two, can you trust in it? And then number three, of course, the continuing issues with ICE and immigration, I think are dominant. There was a story, Lynette, I've never asked you, but I've never asked you, are you Catholic by chance?
I would say I was born Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I wouldn't say that I'm too religious now. Not to say that I don't believe in any God. I would say that I don't worship any God. I'm not one to tell someone that their God or religion isn't real or.
Gotcha. Well, the reason why I bring it up is there was a really disturbing story that came out of Vatican City that they had a very horrible attack, actually, on the altar at St. Peter's Basilica. A gentleman, actually, I shouldn't call him a gentleman, an individual went up and urinated on the altar during a mass, which is really odd that he was allowed to do so. He was instantly arrested and incarcerated, but nonetheless, I mean, talk about desecration. I'm Catholic. A lot of people that are associated with WJOB are, and to me, that's just a complete uncalled for desecration. The individual, I can't remember what political reason he had for doing so, but he was making a political statement, and I just think that it's wrong. Again, my belief is that I'm Roman Catholic, but you have the right to your beliefs. You have the right to your religion. I'm going to respect everybody's religion. And like you, Lynette, I'm not going to tell people how to worship. I'm going to tell them that they have the right to their religion. I have the right to mine, and that's where it should be. And this was quite a repugnant desecration, if you will, that he urinated on an altar. So that shows that it's not just the craziness is not just going on in the United States. It's going on worldwide, and it's bothersome that this type of stuff happens. So, and I've got a text from Jed, who's probably standing like right over Lynette's shoulder. But just to let people know what's going on, we're putting in a brand new tech system tomorrow night. So we're trying to work on the current one for 2 more days till we get the new system in place. So bear with us. A lot of people depend on WJOB for news, for sports, for weather, and for talk radio and conversation. And it's been around 102 years, folks. So Jed's done a tremendous job updating it and putting in all kinds of new technology, but sometimes there's a price with that new technology and trying to merge old systems and new systems. So bear with us as we make that transition. Again, 845-1100 is the number if you want to call. The Once again, the big story locally has been the whole issue of immigration and these ICE raids, and it just seems to me that there's a better way of handling the situation at hand. I get it. Look, nobody wants a criminal element in their community, and if these are criminals and they're going after them, they should do so. But at the same time, it's how you do it. Sometimes it's not what you do; it's how you do it. And there's got to be a better way. There's got to be an opportunity for local law enforcement to cooperate, especially over in Illinois. I'm not saying it's not occurring in Indiana, but in Illinois it certainly isn't. So better cooperation between law enforcement and federal agencies would be helpful. Maybe a turning down of the false information that's spread instantly, that is constantly out there. People these days don't wait to find out if there's any truth to anything. They just make up their own stories. And I have to laugh. A friend of mine named Ron, who lives in Robertsdale, owns a well-known business in Hammond, likes to go to social media, and when people will post things, even an accident now, they'll say, what happened? And he'll say alien crash, or he'll throw something out so outrageous, and just to see if people believe him. And what's funny is, I spoke to him a week ago, is the number of people who actually believe some of his posts, and he's being funny. I mean, it's obnoxiously funny when he will post something and say, they'll say, oh, there's a fire. For example, when there was a fire, I think in Linwood a few weeks ago, the tire fire, and he posted, it was a crash of an alien spacecraft, and somebody responded, really? And it's like, come on, folks, he's joking. It's not real, but people believe everything these days. And, maybe it shows that we're kind of thin-skinned and short-tempered, and we need to pull back a little bit and take a time out, take a deep breath before we respond, before we post something. And especially if we don't know the truth, it's fine to ask what's going on, but don't go out there and post things needlessly. There are news sources. There are reputable news sources. I talk about Region News Source. Paul Goddard does a great job trying to put just factual information. And I know it's a very big challenge at times for him to make sure that the news that he's posting and the news that's going out there is legitimate, that it is real, because there's so much false information that goes out there. So, if you can trust in some news sources, but don't trust in everything that people post, because things people post sometimes are totally false. They're just totally not true at all. There were some posts recently about the military basically removing certain portraits and removing certain honors of certain past veterans. And the fact is that most of those sources and most of those news reports were false, and they found out that they were being actually planted by Russian operatives. So they got people all stirred up. There was a story about a woman. She was a colonel. I can't remember the details, but it ends up that the story was completely false, and it was actually posted by Russian operatives just to undermine American society. And we're guilty too often of jumping on board and believing things that just aren't true. And we need to take a step back. We need to go back to the old adage of calmer heads prevail. Let's look at problems. Let's talk about them. You're welcome to call here and talk about them. But let's talk about them and not just jump to conclusion and assume that everything that you read and everything that you see, especially things that sound inflammatory, that sound kind of hard to believe, Those are the things you shouldn't believe. You shouldn't just automatically assume that because you saw it, it must be true. Because again, I can show you plenty of stories and plenty of falsehoods that are out there. And we're destroying our own society, folks. We are destroying our own society. We've built this great country, this great society at hand, and we're destroying it over needless and false information. So do your part by not jumping to the conclusion that everything you see is true, that everything you read is true, because oftentimes it's not. It's being produced by some guy in a basement of a decrepit building in downtown Moscow that's being paid by the Russian government to post false information, and they're sitting back and they're laughing because they're destroying the American society and society as a whole. Their goal is to control society and to basically cause, society to fail. And we're getting to that point. So 845-1100, love to hear your views on what I'm saying this morning. As I said before, we do have a guest coming in or calling in at 7 o'clock, Phil Kazaya. But it's dangerous that we're so short-tempered and so quick to believe all the false information that's out there. And it's just an undermining of American society. Again, 845-1100 is a number to call. We had some tech problems this morning, but they've now cleared up. So if you want to call in, feel free to do so. Just looking at other issues that are out there. I'm bothered by an issue, and Lynette, if you can put your headphones back on, your mic on. There was a story that I touched on last week, and you probably heard about it. It was called Arctic frost. Did you hear about this story?
I'm not sure.
So Arctic frost is the fact that the FBI had basically obtained the phone records of 8 U.S. senators and congressmen. It broke about a week ago, and it got a decent amount of coverage, but I don't think it got the coverage that it should. Here's my concern, that it shows how easily government, whether you like them or not, and law enforcement can obtain information about our lives. So in this case, 8 senators who had nothing to do really with the investigation that was going on had their phone records basically obtained by the FBI, and they were reviewed. To me, that's bothersome. I don't want people to know who I call and who I text, and I don't think you do either. I think you're entitled to your right to privacy. I mean, if you want to contact Matt and send him a funny post, you're welcome to do that. And if you want to send him a nasty message, well, then so be it. But I don't think you want others to start looking in on your phone calls and your text messages, do you?
Nope.
I mean, think about it for a minute. When you're younger and you first get a phone, you always have at least that belief that your parents are listening in or watching and who you're calling and what you're looking at. And then all of a sudden you become an adult and you find out that the government can do that. And to me, that's very frightening. There's so much information that's out there about us. Are you aware, for example, that a number of retailers know exactly what you're buying with your credit card?
Oh, yeah.
They share that information. So, if you go and you buy something at Walmart, well, Target knows what you bought. So do a number of other businesses. The same thing is true when you go online and you buy something. Even when you search something, if you use Google for a search engine, they share that information, and before you know it, your social media is filled with the ads for that same item that you just searched for. And to me, that's wrong. I like my right to privacy. I don't really want people to know that I bought dog food online, for example. I don't want people to know what sites I visit or what I'm searching to buy. I think that's private information. I don't want people to know that you and I text each other. I mean, to me, that's my right to privacy. And the bigger problem with this Arctic frost is the fact that it was allowed to happen. and that it got its 15 minutes of play, and then they moved on to another story. And I think that's a really serious issue. We have a caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Well, you talk about right to privacy and how Walmart, once you buy some at Walmart, then Target knows about it. And every time you turn on your phone, the ad pops up for something you were just searching for. So do you think that these data centers are, everybody wants to build these data centers to keep our gadgets going? Or do you think they want to harvest our information and spy on us? Because that's what I believe it is. I think it's legal spying.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it is. I think those data centers, in many ways, look, they're necessary. I get it. We have this great use of the internet and use of data and media that we need them. But I agree with you. I worry about my right to privacy. I mean, look, people don't realize most of your income, for example, is accessible by the IRS. You get paid electronically. They have that information. They have access to those payroll systems. They know what taxes you're paying. They know what you're buying. They know where you're spending money. They can track you these days. I mean, people who say, the IRS is going to find out what I'm doing. Well, they probably know about it already because the information's out there. And to me, it's frightening. There is no privacy.
Yeah, no, they're blowing smoke up everybody's. You know what about? We got to keep so you could use your phone. Bull crap! It's all data harvesting and spying. That's all it is.
Again, I ordered dog food. Since I'm down in Florida, we ordered some dog food from Amazon. It in fact was just a reorder of the same item. I got 7 different messages on my phone yesterday. I got a text message that Walmart has that same dog food on sale. I got messages on Facebook. And when I went to Google to look for something else, up pops an ad for dog food. Now, that wasn't coincidental. That was deliberate.
No.
That was they knew that I bought dog food from Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you get some time, maybe after the show, if you got a little read, if you want to do a little reading on the same subject, I heard this morning that Walmart just is going to do a partnership with Chat GPT, and they're up to something with them. They'll know everything you do. And I didn't dig into the story too bad, but I just heard about how they're partnering with that OpenAI or ChatGPT, whatever it's called. And
it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise that Walmart would do that because Walmart, people talk about Sam Walton being a genius, but Sam Walton was a genius because in large part he took the information that he got from sales records for his stores when he first started Walmart. And he would take that sales information and he determined what items they should stock in which stores. So while Kmart stocked snowblowers in every store that they had, including, say, one down in Miami, Walmart said, we're going to stock items that are basically selling in local, in the local stores. So they wouldn't sell snow throwers. They wouldn't stock them in Miami, but they would stock, swimwear, for example, in the middle of winter. And they were able to focus on their merchandise based on the demands. Well, before you knew it, Walmart also was very quick to jump on the bandwagon in analyzing credit card sales. And so they were a leader in analyzing credit card sales and saying, these are the things that Tom's buying. These are the things that Lynette's buying. And stocking them in those stores and then advertising that information to those customers. So I'm not surprised that they're working with AI to try and look at the next way to promote items in their stores and online.
Yeah. So, all right, you have a good day.
You as well. Thanks for calling. 845-1100 is the number to call. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. It's the Morning Call with Tom Dabertin on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. All right, we're back, and again at 7 o'clock, Phil Kazai is going to call in and talk about the newest performance that he's involved in. It's a play being conducted out in Michigan City. Phil, of course, a retired Hammond police officer. But let's take a quick look at traffic and weather. Northwest Indiana. Let's start with Northwest Indiana. Looking at traffic, I-65 looks pretty decent. 80-94 is in good shape. The toll road. Some backup east of I-65, otherwise in pretty good shape. Going across the line, the Bishop Ford is in decent shape. Starting to back up, somewhere around 103rd. The Skyway's in good shape. The Dan Ryan is in decent shape, although there is some backup now all the way down to, I shouldn't say that, I guess, because inbound, it's now backing up to 47th into the circle. The Kennedy inbound is a problem. Same for the Eisenhower, the Stevenson. 294 looks pretty good overall. So there's traffic. Let's talk about weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 58 degrees with highs of 62 and lows of 52. We'll be having a shower in spots this morning, otherwise clouds yielding to some sun, and tonight should be mostly cloudy. Then tomorrow on Thursday, we'll be having highs of 69 and lows of 54, with clouds breaking for some sun. And then Friday, we'll be having highs of 75 and lows of 59. Should be breezy and warm with clouds followed by a brightening sky.
Now, I poked fun earlier. I said, you could tell that it's getting a little cold because you got a sweater on today, right?
Yep.
So let me ask you a question, because when I was your age, I never wore a coat. I don't care. It was freezing cold. I'd wear like a sweater, but I never wore a coat. It'd get down to 25 degrees before I put a coat on. Is that still common with your generation or not?
I think I see a lot of people my age wearing hoodies but with shorts. So yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. So that hasn't changed because you're absolutely right. I'd wear shorts in the winter. And a lot of people did that. So there's a tradition that hasn't changed. It's one of those regional traditions. You always knew, for example, when you went down to IU Bloomington, who was from Northwest Indiana, because you'd see them wearing basically a sweatshirt. They didn't really have hoodies at the time, and shorts in the middle of winter. And everybody else would be down there, and they'd be bundled up, and they'd be wearing, the heavy coats. But you knew they were from Northwest Indiana. You'd walk up and you'd go, well, where are you from? And they'd be like, Hobart, Maryville, St. John. And it was just so funny because the people from Northwest Indiana never dressed for the weather in Bloomington. We have some callers, so let's go to those callers. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hello, Tom.
Good morning. Yes, good morning.
Hey, it's Phil Kazaya.
Phil, how are you? You got a lot of little noise in the background. You got some noise going on in the background.
Oh, sorry. See if I can cut that out here. Okay. Any better?
Not much, but we'll go with it. So I've told we've had a lot of noise. Phil, we're gonna have to have you call back because that noise is deafening.
Okay.
All right, try and call back. Call right back. So again, folks, Phil Kazaya is a retired Hammond police officer, and he just got interested in community theater one day. And it was really funny because you'd see Phil, he'd be working off duty at Strachan Van Til in Whiting, for example. And then the next thing you'd see him dancing on stage and, in different performances at the Marion Theater Guild. And I'd be like, that guy looks just like the cop over at Strachan Van Til, and got to know Phil over the years because of his involvement in community theater. And it was very, very comical for people to realize that hey, that cop, that big burly cop, was in fact the same guy that they saw performing in something like Young Frankenstein on stage. So it was kind of a fun time. Lynette, take a look and see. I think he's trying to call back now. Not yet?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, so yeah, there was some noise, but Phil has a funny story to tell because about his involvement. He decided to try it out one day, and he's really good at it. And I don't know if you'll get the chance to see him in this performance, Lynette, but if you can imagine the quintessential cop, all of a sudden you see him on the street, you see him in the stores, And then the next thing you know, here's this guy and he's dancing and doing pratfalls on stage. And it's like his alter ego because he didn't look like the kind of guy that would be interested in doing community theater, but he's actually very good at it. He can dance, he can sing, he can tell jokes, he can deliver lines, and it's very refreshing. And it was a hidden talent of Phil's for many years, and then he retired last summer as a police officer and came in and sat in with me one morning, and there were a lot of people when they saw him, they're like, wait a minute, yeah, I know you. In fact, I think one person said that they may have gotten a ticket from Phil before, but they didn't know that he had such talent. So we're hoping he's going to be able to call back in just a minute and like to do that interview. Again, 845-1100 is the number to call, and we're waiting on Phil. So, Phil, call back in because this is your time. And yeah, today's one of those technical days, isn't it? It's just like if there's something that's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. Now we lost Phil. But the performance that he's in is actually called, and bear with me, I'm going to pull it up. It is called Tracers, and it's being held in Michigan City on October 17, 18, 24, and 25 at 7 p.m., and October 19 and 26 at 2 p.m. And it's being held at the Holdcraft Performing Arts Center in Michigan City. So hopefully when he calls in, he can give more information about it. But we'll go back to talking about the unique attire that people from Northwest Indiana wear when it comes to cold weather. So when you were a student at Purdue, for example, did they'd walk around and you said they'd wear hoodies and shorts, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where that custom began, or where the the origins of it, but I know that it was alive and well in the late 1970s in Bloomington, Indiana, when I was down there, and I still see speaking of retired police officers, I see a police officer by the name of Brad who, in the middle of winter, he will walk into Strachan Van Til and Whiting, and he'll be wearing shorts. It'll be snowing, and he just laughs and says, "Hey, I do it because I can." And we laugh about it. I'm one of those people. I don't put a coat on. A lot of times I'll run from the car. I prefer not to drive with a coat on in the car. So, I'm one of those people. It's the middle of winter, and then I'll see somebody in the store, and they'll say, "Hey, Dabertin, don't you have a coat? Can't you afford a decent coat?" And it's like, "Yeah, I've got a coat. It's out in the car." And it's like, well, it does you a lot of good, but you try and be comfortable. I guess I like a nice warm car in the middle of winter. The seat heater's working. Can't say enough about it. But then I step out into the cold weather and run into the store for no good reason instead of putting on that coat. Well, Phil, we've lost Phil, haven't we?
Yep. Oh, this might be him.
There. Okay. Let's try this again. Good morning. You're on the air.
Oh, Tom, me again.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Involved in another theater production. This one happens to be in Michigan City, and it's about the Vietnam War.
Vietnam War. Well, we had Walt call in, of course, and Walt is a Vietnam veteran. So I take it this is not a comedy. This is a more straight-laced production, correct?
Well, it's the way I've described it is it's a sad, happy, and horrifying. So it's really? a real emotional roller coaster. My character happens to be, if anyone's ever seen the R. Lee Emery in Full Metal Jacket or Boys in Company C, that's kind of my character. I am the drill instructor.
Ah, that'd be a good role for you, Phil. You make a good drill instructor.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. At times it's a very heavy script because it's about Vietnam. It involves drugs, suicide, PTSD, everything it's involved. It was actually written by John DeFusco and some friends of his who are all Vietnam veterans.
So, think about Vietnam for a minute. I mean, you and I were too young to obviously get drafted, but we were old enough to remember Vietnam quite well.
Yes.
Growing up, I mean, it was the centerpiece of every newscast. It was, the nightly news, and I've told the story before that when I was a kid, my mom banned me from watching the news on Friday because they'd give the weekly tally, the number of killed in action. And I would say, well, we're winning because we had fewer killed in action than the enemy. And she said, well, that's not how you look at it. But, I was a kid at the time. And it was a very influential part of our growing up. So how does it feel? How does it feel to be in a play that basically reenacts and discusses some of the more difficult situations and issues related to Vietnam? Because it wasn't just the war; it was the fact that there was not a lot of support back home for that war. It exposed a lot of individuals to drug use and to a lot of problems. You mentioned suicide. Talk about that for a bit.
Well, for me personally, the reason I'm involved in this play in the first place when I heard about it is because I have a personal experience because my brother was killed in Vietnam in 1968. So my involvement in this play is a bit personal because I've always wanted to be involved in some kind of vehicle that paid tribute to the men and women of the armed forces, and especially the men and women who served and died in Vietnam, one of which, again, happens to be my brother.
Wow, I did not know that. And let me ask you this, Phil. Were you in the military?
No, just the police.
And partly, I'm going to assume that part of it was the loss of your brother. Certainly had an influence on you. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. I did not realize that he had passed away in Vietnam. So he was killed in action?
Yes, it was in November. He actually died, was killed on my father's birthday, and it's an extra heavy day for my mother. God bless her. She turns 97 here in just a few days. And she is, from all accounts that we can figure out, she's the last surviving Gold Star mother in Lake County, Indiana, Vietnam.
Wow. Wow.
So,
wow. That's, what a heavy burden on her all these years. I mean, that's
sure.
And obviously it made a big change in her perspective and her view of life too.
Yes. My mother, God bless her, and we're talking back in the 60s, there were peace signs everywhere, and someone had coined the phrase that the peace sign is the footprint of the American chicken. And my mother really, really grabbed that and embraced that simply because, of what Freddie actually lied about his age and went in at 17. And he served in there for 2 years before he was killed. He was doing what he wanted to do. He wanted to fight for his country. He wasn't drafted, wasn't dragged into it. He wanted to serve his country. In his mind, he was doing the right thing. So, I mean, we love him. We appreciate him. One of his excerpts from one of his letters home actually is carved into the Vietnam Memorial in Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
So,
can I ask you, I mean, do you see some similarities with some of the upheaval and some of the strife that's going on in society right now over things like immigration and the Vietnam era? I mean, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of consternation and upheaval. There are a lot of people that are very, very opinionated. And it kind of reminds me, in my own mind, of the Vietnam era, because we were very divided, and there were a lot of people who were kind of at each other's throats. You're right about that, where they gave their opinions very strongly about whether we should be there or not, and whether we should support the troops or not. And what do you think?
Yeah, I've always said myself in my career that I got on in 94, and when I got on in 94, I never thought we would go through in my estimation, like another civil rights upheaval. And that goes back to the George Floyd thing. And I never saw anything like that coming. Of course, none of us know what the future holds. But yeah, I do see a lot of. We're so divided. This is not news to anybody. We are such a divided. Most people are extremely left, extremely right, and I like to keep myself in the middle. And that's not a very populated area to be in.
It's not easy. I share that same view. I try to stay in the middle, and it's so difficult to be there these days because the two sides are trying to pull everybody to one side or the other. So sitting in the middle is not easy. You're right about that. But so tell people about how they can get tickets for the play. And
sure.
Again, while we're waiting for you to call back, I gave the dates: October 17, 18, 24, and 25th at 7 p.m. and October 19th and 26th at 2 p.m. And that's at the Holdcraft Performing Arts Center, 1200 Spring Street in Michigan City. Give people more information about how they can get tickets.
Yeah, my suggestion, especially from our area out there in and around Hammond, that area, my suggestion is to order your tickets ahead of time. The theater setting, the way it's set up, holds about 80 people. And so it'd be a good idea to get your tickets early instead of driving out and possibility of not getting a ticket. The website, you can either look up Holdcraft Players or the Play Tracers, Google that. Also, you can go to a site, yptcinc.com/tickets. Again, that's yptc.com/tickets, and that'll take you to the site.
And you've been in community theater for how many years now?
Well, I kind of walked into it back in about 22. I did it in high school and took a 45-year break and got back into it.
And again, I've tried to give people an idea of who you are. Of course, you were on with me before, and like to have you come on again in the studio one day. But Phil, you looked like a police officer. You were the quintessential. You looked like a guy that even when you weren't in uniform, you looked like you'd be a police officer.
So you're saying I couldn't do any undercover drug buys, I guess, right?
I guess not, because I think most people would say, no, that's a cop. But at the same time, and I just got another text from a longtime listener, Lynette, who's saying no show today. So I don't know what that means, but maybe she just was talking about earlier.
No,
just
yes,
to let you know.
the radio is back down again.
So the radio's back down again.
Yes.
So the again, it's I'd see you at Strachan Van Til. You'd be standing there working off duty as security. And then the next thing I see is you on stage and you're dancing and singing in what was the one about what was the name of the production where the Bleacher Bums? Bleacher Bums, yeah. You were in Bleacher Bums, and it's like, wait a minute, that's the guy that I know from Strachan Van Til. And it was just so funny to see that change. So
one of the guys at work described me as an onion. So I have a lot of different layers, apparently, and I'm like, okay, that works for me.
Well, that's not a bad description. I mean,
no,
in a way, that's not bad to have a lot of layers to have a lot of variations. But you're a man of many talents. You're a police officer for how many years?
30
years. So you're a police officer for 30. You did high school productions when you were younger, and then you got back into it in a few years ago, and now you're all over the place. So you're acting in Michigan City, but you've also done work up in Whiting at Marion Theater Guild. Have you been? I think you were at Munster Performing Arts before. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
No, not at this point. No.
Okay. So you've been around. You've been in a number of productions and played various characters. And I think a year ago I said, or 2 years ago I said, but I don't know if you could dance. And then you were in a role where you had to dance. I remember that.
Yeah, that was work. That was work.
Yeah, well, you've got, you know what? I envy you because you're able to do that. And my daughter's wedding is coming up this December, and I be very honest with you, I am terrified of having to do that dance with my daughter. I mean, I'm looking forward to it on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm terrified by it because I don't dance. And so I may look for some pointers because you're able to put that all aside and enjoy yourself up there. So I might look for some pointers from you.
Yes, just have a good time. And again, I would like to invite everybody out, especially any veterans that might be listening, to come out and see this play. It's a special piece of work, and again, it was written by guys who actually served in Vietnam, so nobody would know it better than them.
Absolutely. Hey, Phil, thank you so much. Thanks for your service as a police officer, and thanks for kind of lightening up things today because it's a difficult time, and people don't realize that the difficult times that we're in, and also I think it's wonderful. What a wonderful tribute for you to be in this play. After losing your brother in 1968, that's quite remarkable. That's a real tribute, and I'm glad that you're doing it.
I appreciate that, and that's why I am involved, and for me, that's what it's all about.
All right, thanks so much. 845-1100 is the number to call. We are having some on again, off again problems this morning with the radio. You're able to hear us on YouTube. Live, you're able to hear us on Jed TV. Not sure about the TuneIn app if that's working or not. Lynette, do you have any idea if that's on?
The radio should be back on. Let's hope it stays on this time.
Okay, so the radio is back on, and Dawn, who's a regular listener, hopefully you can hear us again. I'm going to text her real fast and tell her it's back on, and it's working again. So again, as Jed pointed out, we're putting in a new system. It's got 2 days to go, today and tomorrow, and then we'll have a new system, and we won't have these problems, hopefully. But you know what? When you upgrade technology can be a real bear. And poor Lynette, you're working. You are definitely earning your keep today with all the problems that we're having.
I don't know if you can see me rolling around all over the studio.
I can, and actually, it's kind of funny. I knew something was going. I can tell something's going on because I can see you rolling around, and usually you're in one position, but you're moving back and forth so much. It's like, I'm like, okay, I think there's a problem again. And then I see you going over to the other computer and coming back to another computer. And so people don't realize it takes a lot to operate radio this day and age. It's not the old vacuum tubes that basically are the basis for a transmitter. And, you just hook up a couple of mics. Nowadays, there's cameras and lights, and there's all these computers, and when you have all this technology, it also means that there's a lot of potential, at least for problems. So, but it's one of those days. Last week was a pretty easy week, so this week it's karma's getting even, I guess. So you heard Phil's interview, or parts of it. And, he said something that I had no idea, that he's in this play because his brother was in Vietnam. And Lynette, I'm sure there are times where you're a little bothered by some of the stuff that's going on right now in society.
Yes.
Again, it's very unsettling. And it really dawned on me this morning that there's a lot of similarities to what's going on right now to the 1960s. And the upheaval in the late 60s and early 70s over the Vietnam War. Some very, very similar situations where you had people dug in on one side or the other. There wasn't a whole lot of room in the middle. Not a lot of compromise. You either were, for the war or against the war. You didn't see too many people in the middle on that one. And they're very, very strong opinions. And it's kind of the same situation right now with what's going on with the immigration sweeps and the different police actions that are going on. Kind of reminds me of the late 60s and early 70s and the upheaval that we had then. The good news, if you will, for you is that we got through it. We got through it, and we were able to kind of find that middle ground again. And I think that's lacking right now. There's too much. There's just too much being said on both sides. And again, I'm bothered by people who post where someone posts and says, "I'm worried about the safety of my family." Okay, I assume that they may not be here legally, and they post something, and you've got 10 people who respond who say, good, let me get your address so I can call ICE and have you arrested too. Again, I'm in favor of getting rid of the criminal element, and I think most people are. The problem is that the debate and the upheaval and the consternation that's going on has basically overshadowed the idea of picking up, some bad individuals that shouldn't be here in the first place and removing them legally and properly, with this constant debate about what's going on, that people have their set views, and they don't consider that there are individuals and their families being being affected by this as well. So looks like we have a caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Tom. Hey, I slept in. I didn't get to start your show till 7:00, but I want to mention something about traffic. Something that I ran into yesterday that maybe I don't know if your traffic people said anything about, but on Calumet Avenue, if you're going south on Calumet Avenue and want to go east or west on 94, the ramp is closed. So I went to go turn around. Yeah, so I went to go turn around to come back north to get on to go east. That ramp is closed. Now, another thing is when I was coming west on 94, I could get off Calumet going north, but now I don't know if you're going east if you can get off, but going south on Calumet, you can't get on the interstate. If you're going north on Calumet, you can't get on the interstate.
So there's some limits. There's some limits on the interchange at Calumet Avenue on 8094.
Yes, 8094 and Calumet Avenue. If you're going south on Calumet Avenue, you can't get off to go east or west, I think, because they had all the barricades up there yesterday when I came by. I was going to get on, and so I thought, okay, I'll just River Road, turn around, boom, driveway, turn around, come back. But then when I looked over, I see barricades. Come back north, you can't get on there. You know what?
I'm glad that you gave us that, because it's not showing up on the traffic computer.
I know it was like, because I was going to the yard and I thought, I'll just take the interstate this time to climb and go north. Well, I should have went the way I always do, because the way I always could do, I love wonderful Hammond because all the railroad tracks, usually I get stuck by a train, But what did I do?
There's just no way avoiding them. There's just no way avoiding them, and it is difficult. And we unfortunately we're largely built because of the influence of Chicago, and Chicago was the train, the railroad capital of the world, and a lot of those trains going into Chicago basically get parked and slowed down as they approach the city, and that's Northwest Indiana for you, and it's part of our legacy, and there's not much we can do.
Yeah, and it's our lifestyle of driving a car. Like they say, come live in Chicago. 1 minute, the weather can change in 5 minutes. It's just like traffic and everything in there. Because like the other day when I took a student out to get tested, I'm coming back and I seen the traffic on Portage backed up, so I ran 12 and 20 back. Well, found out that semi-dump driver was killed in that accident on 94. So now yesterday, I took a student, he passed, and I thought, I told him, well, it's only about 230 something. Traffic shouldn't be too bad, but we come up to I-65 and we see it backed up. We're getting off and going north. But yesterday coming back, boom. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Somebody asked me the other day, and they were talking about that, and you're an expert, so I'm glad that you called in. When trucks basically in the summer, they have air conditioning systems for the cabs, and a lot of these extended cabs they will plug in basically and keep the cab nice and cool. What do they do in the winter months? The question was, do they have to run the engine, or is there an electric heater system that, like, when you're waiting for a load, how do you keep the cab warm?
Well, if you're a freight box, most docks are outside, so you can leave the trucks running, But the thing is most of these, there's a place in this area that has these, they're thermal packs. They're right behind the cab, and it keeps the motor and everything warm, and you can run it and don't have to have the truck turned on. But the nowadays trucks, the nowadays semis, my old days when I drove, when I was sleeping in the wintertime, I had to either put a stick to idle it up to keep the temperature at 150. But now, like the last truck I drove, it stayed at 180. But the thing about a semi is, I checked it one time. You can let a semi idle for 24 hours, and it'll burn less than 1 gallon of gasoline. I mean, 1 gallon of diesel.
So I understand that they really don't burn a lot of fuel when they're idling. But my understanding also is that there are a number of places where, like, if you're sitting in a loading dock, they don't want you to run the engine because the fumes basically oftentimes will go right through that trailer and into the warehouse area or into the loading area. And so a lot of them don't want you to run it. Plus, there's always the issue about the truck going into gear. But the bigger issue is that the fumes that it can create. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. But some of the docks, they have you drop the trailers and they put this brace underneath the fifth wheel so the trailer won't tip when they're loading it. But most of your outside docks, they'll let you sit there and idle because they got a little bar that comes up behind your trailer, your DOT bumper, and it locks it into the plate, But the thing is, there's more. Yeah,
the docking plate. The docking plate, yeah, right?
There's more safety nowadays in the trucks, and the trucks stay warm. Or a lot of times they'll have a truck driver's lounge at a loading dock. That way you can sit in there and and stay warm. I mean, it's different, but the winter time, now these trucks stay nice, and the wipers and the windshields are a lot better because my old trucks, you had the wipers on and it was snowing. It would ice up, and I'd have to try to reach out my window and grab the wiper to knock the ice off. But where now the heaters and stuff they got for the windshields, and now somebody said they got wiper warmers. I've never seen that yet.
Wiper warmers. So how would that work? So
I don't know.
If it's built into the wiper, I mean, I've had cars that have had wiper warmers, but I mean, it would have to be built into the system, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started driving a truck, had to manually open and roll down and roll up the windows. Didn't have no air conditioning. You had to, and then we had the old vents. You could turn them all the way over and get more air into the truck, But the tech now, now like a lot of the students were teaching now, like there's so many of these big companies now that. See, we train as a Class A, and they can be manual or automatic. But if you go with a DOT license at the testing site A, then you're restricted to just automatic only. But now, like these big companies now are basically getting rid of all the manual trucks. They're going to automatics because some of the new people coming in to driving the trucks now cannot shift, which we've had problems. Nice thing about automatics is if you're stuck in traffic, you ain't got to keep shifting the truck.
Well, by the way, I don't know if you heard earlier, Lynette and I were talking about the fact that people from the region have been known for years, and all the way back to my generation, and currently through her generation. In the middle of winter, they'll wear shorts and a hoodie. And I remember there was a guy named Jim Seachy, who was a transportation and logistics manager at American National Can Corporation when I worked there. And he said, I don't know what it is about you guys from the region, but he said he always knew if a trucker was from the region, because they would get out of the truck, they'd be wearing a sweatshirt and shorts in the middle of winter.
Yeah. And another thing about all the people in this region or anywhere driving, when you're alongside of a semi or behind it, be very careful, because if one of them tires blow and then the rubber comes off, buddy, that thing's going to come through your windshield. It's going to bust it. That's like, I always try to stay in front of the semis or stay away from them. I get scared when I have a motorcycle behind me coming up, because I've heard on the news and I've seen where a motorcyclist was behind a semi and a tire blew. The tire came and hit him and knocked off a bike and killed him. The tires are, long time ago they used to call what's called recap tires for semis. They kind of get in weight, because my boss will never, ever again buy recaps.
So what was a recap? Explain that to people.
They take, when the tire wears out, they take the tires to the tire place and they file them all down, and they just put they redo the tire. It's called a recap. My boss only buys virgin tires, which is completely brand new tires, because in the summertime, these tires will heat up. I mean, I've checked the temperatures on these. I got a temperature gun, and I check the temperature of my axles and my tires. And when these roads when it gets about 80, 85 degrees out, the temperature of them tires are way up there. It can pop them out. And the best thing is, don't stay alongside of a semi by their tires, because if it blows out, it's going to hit you guys.
So basically, recap is kind of like retread, because I've heard the term retread before, and I've seen before where the truck is going down the highway and the tread part of it flies off, but the rest of the tire is still there. It's basically the same thing. Okay,
that's what it is. The whole round outside tire, they put another one on there. But no, I'm gonna let you get back to your show. I kind of slept in, so I missed the first hour, but it looks like I'm watching. I finally got this thing figured out for this YouTube thing. It looks like you're still in Florida, huh?
Well, for a few more days. Yes, I am. But it's wonderful.
I know
it's wonderful to be part of the show every week.
I know you lost your wonderful household pet, during pierogi. Did you get another one?
We did. We got Sophie, who's looking at me right now because I just said her name and now she's rolling over. Sophie is a white Pyrenees and Anatolian Shepherd mix. She's a big dog, but she's very, very friendly. We got her from a place called Fetching Tails. She is just about 2 years old and spent most of her life in shelters. And she is as friendly and as docile as you can imagine. She's a big dog, but she gets along great with Luna. And she's sitting here looking at me, and she can't wait because when the show is over, we have to go to the dog park so she can play with all of her friends.
Hey, when you get a chance after the show's over, if you're not busy, I know you ring me or you never call back, but you get a chance to call me. I got to tell you something that's not very important, something good. Sure. I mean, when you got the time this morning, I'd like to mention this. And one shout out to Paul Goddard. Okay. I know he's listening. I thank him so much that he's going to try to help me get that camper and everything out of the campground. Everything fell in place because I like to thank Paul Goddard and all the wonderful things he does. But the thing is, I got rid of the camper.
Paul was focused on helping you on that camper from the very get-go. When you first became ill, Paul was the guy that called me and said, I've got somebody. He put me in touch with the gentleman that I think is going to help you out. And Paul Goddard's a great individual. People don't know the length that Paul will go. He tries to keep the news as fair and as balanced as possible on Region News Source, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't try and help people out, because he certainly does. So great shout out to Paul.
And the thing is last weekend we got rid of the camper and the golf cart, so now I'm going to be camping at home. But thing is he did a wonderful thing, and the thing is I know where he works at, and I used to be a house truck there, and then all of a sudden, when years I found out he was doing this, so every time I would go in there when I was not a house truck anywhere, I'd go by where he's working at and say hi to him, But no, I go to his news thing because he is just amazing. Something happens and bam, it's right up there.
All right. Hey, thanks so much.
Hey,
thanks for calling, Mike, and I'll give you a
and
call.
all the listeners and everybody that's listening to this and all the people just have a wonderful and have a very safe day.
All right, will do. It's the morning call with Tom Dabertin, and we're in our the last stretch, home stretch, Lynette, if you will, because at 8:00, the Munster Chamber of Commerce is coming on, and then the School City of Hammond. So it's my short day. So it means that Sophie and Luna get to go to the dog park. So we're going to take a quick break for some commercial messages. You're listening to the morning call on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. All right, we're in the home stretch, and I just sent Lynette a couple of photos of Sophie, and she's going to post them. Again, Sophie is my newest dog. She joins Luna. She's not a replacement for Duke. Duke was an amazing dog, so there's no replacement for Duke. But Sophie is a Great Pyrenees Anatolian Shepherd mix, and she looks like a polar bear. Actually, Lynette, she if you look at the photos, she almost looks like the polar bear in those Coca-Cola commercials at Christmas time. She has that look, that face. So she is a great big baby, and she's actually laying on the floor right now, upside down. Her feet are up in the air, and she's just looking at me like, okay, when you're done with whatever you're doing, we're going to the dog park, because that's her favorite place to go. So, so that is Sophie. She's named, by the way, for listeners, she's named for Sophie Cunningham. We were trying to come up with a name. They had named her in the shelter Janet. Janet's not a good name for a dog. Janet's a name for a person, but not a good name for a dog. So, we couldn't figure out what to name her, and finally it was my wife who said, just name her, we'll name her Sophie. We name her after Sophie Cunningham from the Fever. And since I enjoy watching the Indiana Fever, and Sophie Cunningham, of course, is one of their star players, it was only fitting to name the dog for Sophie Cunningham. So there you go. That is Sophie, the new dog. So what do you think, Lynette?
She's very cute.
Yeah, she's a very, you know what? It's funny. I don't think she realizes how big she is. She's a big dog. She really is. And so she'll go to the dog park, and she's fascinated by all these little tiny, fluffy dogs that are like 5 pounds. She's so fascinated by them. And she'll try and run after them. And they actually have a fence between the large dog and the small dog park. So she'll run back and forth along the fence and chase the little dogs, and then realize that, hey, there's some great big dog that comes up behind her, like a Doberman or a Golden Retriever, will flatten her out, and then she takes off after them. But she's a lot of fun. And of course, Luna is my golden, or my black lab mix that I've had for a number of years now. So they get along great as well. Do you have a dog?
I do. I have one dog. I used to have two, but they died of old age, so now we have this new one. Well, he's not new. He's 7 years old now.
What kind of dog?
He's an American Bully.
Oh, okay. All right. And, I just encourage people, look, if you're looking for, especially in the kind of the storm that we're in as a society, if you're looking for a very unconditional, loving companion, dogs, you can't say enough about them. Dogs are wonderful, and there's so many dogs in so many shelters. I mentioned before, my wife Donna is a regular volunteer at the Whiting Animal Shelter. They're full to the brim, and so is the Indiana Humane in Munster, the Hobart Animal Shelter. They're all looking for people to adopt pets. Unfortunately, people adopted pets during COVID and then gave them up when they got called back to work. And that's not what you do. A pet is unconditionally loves you, and you don't give them up just because it's going to be inconvenient. Again, there are lots and lots of listeners out there who, again, could use the comfort and the love of a dog. I can't say enough about them. I've had dogs for years, pretty much all my life, and dogs are great, except like on Friday down here. By the way, I didn't tell you about this. So on Friday, they needed to go out in the midst of a rainstorm. Remember I told you last week about the King's Tide and how the water would rise up around the condo, and you all of a sudden the streets would be flooded, and then it would dissipate in about 20 minutes time. So we had the King's Tide last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Lo and behold, on Friday, right around the time of high tide, we had 5.5 inches of rain. Now, 5.5 inches of rain up in the region is a massive flood. And we had a couple of those, and we had, lots of wet basements and everything else. In Florida, 5.5 inches of rain is nothing out of the ordinary because they're used to it with tropical storms and tropical depressions and hurricanes and all that kind of stuff. So at 12 noon, we get this 5.5 inches of rain and we get high tide. Every single street. It looked like Venice. The properties here are designed basically to be up, so you're not going to have water coming into the buildings. But every single street looked like Venice, Italy. They were completely, it was curb to curb water. And it just stopped everything because people couldn't get around. I mean, you've got, 6 or 7 inches of rain, maybe 8 inches or 8 inches of water out there because you had 5.5 inches of rain and then you had the runoff plus the king's tide. So it just sat there. But lo and behold, it's like somebody flipped the switch. And an hour later, the streets are dry, the sun comes out, and my brother called me. He had heard about the story in Chicago on television that, the streets were flooded in South Florida. And I said, yeah, they were for about 20 minutes to an hour, and then it all dissipates. It's all gone, and you don't see any remnants of it. So, and the king's tide is over for the year. So we're not having massive tides anymore. We're not having the water come in from the intercoastal waterway and from the ocean. So we're back to normal down here. But that was just the most bizarre thing. I mean, I can't imagine what would happen in the region if we had those kinds of floods. People would be just up in arms. They couldn't believe it. And the drains in South Florida, the street drains, are like 4 foot by 4 foot squares. So they're huge. It's basically a totally different setup than it is in Northwest Indiana, where you have that small 18-inch grid. These are massive, massive drains, but when the water flows in reverse because of the tide, it can flood pretty quickly. 845-1100 is a number to call. And I think you said, Lynette, you're looking at maybe a little drizzle today, but not a lot of rain in the region for a couple of days, right?
Yep.
So, and down here we're out of what's called the rainy season. So we're into the sun again, and I hate to bring this up, but we're going to be in the upper 80s for the next few days, and it should be nice here. And Sophie, I can't turn the camera down, but Sophie is right over by me. She's decided now that she'd come and say hi. So she's near me, folks, but I won't get her on camera right now. So 845-1100 is the number. We've got about 10 more minutes, and then the Munster Chamber of Commerce show comes on WJOB, followed by the school city of Hammond. And so it's my short day this week, which is kind of nice. We haven't had any. We've had some on again, off again problems with the radio this morning, so not a lot of callers. But wondered if there's anybody out there. I had mentioned Indiana University in Bloomington. If there's anybody out there following the amazing story of the Indiana Hoosiers in football, they are number 3. They knocked off Oregon. They are really a real team. I mean, they were considered a flash in the pan last year. They had a great season, and made the playoffs. Got beat by Notre Dame. And everybody said, okay, well, that's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And the Hoosiers are here to stay. Their coach is amazing. They are trouncing their opponents. They moved up to number 3 in the polls. And it's just kind of impossible to believe that the Indiana Hoosiers could produce such a dominant football team. But it also says a lot about things that Sam Michael and Peter Krakowski and others talk about, and even Jed, which is the portal. That, it's not the way it used to be that people went to the same college for 4 years. Now they can transfer from one college to another based on the opportunities that they have in athletics. And kind of the same holds true with the new rule in Indiana high school sports, where you can move once from one school to another without reason, without cause. So that's going to change some things, I think, over time. I think a lot of 6th and 7th man positions on basketball teams are going to find themselves at other schools so that they can be a starter instead of a reserve player. So I think there's going to be some change there. But the Indiana Hoosiers, I mean, it's an amazing team. I watched them Saturday. I was just awestruck by their dominance on the field. So unfortunately, Jed and I and Jed's dad are all Boilermaker fans, and the Purdue Boilermakers are not the powerhouse that they once were in football. That hasn't happened in a number of years, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But Indiana, the state of Indiana, actually has become kind of a football state. It's always been a basketball state. Now it's a football state because you've got Notre Dame, you've got IU Bloomington, and then of course you've got Purdue. So it's become a football state, which is pretty remarkable in itself, because Indiana, generally, with the exception of Notre Dame and sometimes Purdue historically, was always thought of a basketball state because of its basketball prowess. And of course, Purdue in recent years has become a massive force when it comes to basketball. And Notre Dame's basically fielded some pretty decent teams as well. So has IU. But times have changed. And again, the fact that IU Bloomington is at the very top of the rankings in football, college football, is just totally remarkable. And I don't think many people thought that you'd see a repeat of last year. We thought it was flash in the pan. It's not. They're here to stay. Their coach is phenomenal, and he's done all the right things, recruiting people to build a team that is just a powerhouse and a half. So, do you watch football at all?
I do not watch any kind of sports.
Really?
I do
Really?
not.
No sports at all? You don't follow any sports? Really? So, no baseball, no basketball, no football?
Nope. Not a sports
Wow.
fan.
Wow. Well, you know what? To each their own. To each their own. And that's fine. Again, it's I think my interest in sports, I was obviously interested when I was younger, and there was a period of time that I could care less. And then as you get older, it's a great way to spend a Saturday or Sunday afternoon watching games on television, or going to games. Locally in basketball, at least, you can go see a Division I game over at Valparaiso University. Don't know how their team's going to be this year. I have to get Mike Jositis on about that one. Mike is a Valparaiso University law grad and usually pretty up on where their team is going to be. So I haven't talked to Mike about their basketball team this year, but I usually go to a couple of their games. And you can also go into Chicago and see a few games, but you're going to pay for it. Valparaiso is a pretty cheap venue when it comes to going to see a Division I basketball game. Football wise, again, Notre Dame probably is the dominant team in our area. Not that they're directly in our area, but I would say there are plenty of rabid IU fans and Purdue fans in our area as well, and probably even a few Illinois fans. Illinois has a pretty good team this year as well, so it's kind of a unique year for football. Basketball is just on the cusp. It's probably a month away, and there'll be lots to talk about with basketball. And then professionally, well, there's the Bears, and yes, they won the other night, and I thought it was so funny because the announcers on ABC, Lynette, I know you didn't watch it, but at the 2-minute mark, at the 2-minute timeout, the ABC announcers are saying that that Chicago lost the game. They had the chance to win it. They lost it. It's a done deal. And there were a lot of people who I'm sure turned the sound off and turned the TV off because they said it was over. And lo and behold, there's an interception and everything changes, and Chicago wins the game in the last few seconds with a field goal. And it was just comical because I sat there and it was on fairly late. Think about 11 o'clock in the region. So fairly late for a Monday night. And I'm watching the game and thinking about all the people who basically turned off the TV, with 2 minutes left, since the announcer said the game is over, there's no chance that the Bears can win this, it's over, and then wake up the next morning and find out, no, the best 2 minutes of football was basically played out after the announcer said the game was over and you may as well give up. So it just tells you never listen to the announcers because they never know what's going on anyway. But that was a pretty remarkable game. That was not bad. They played the Washington Commanders in Washington. I will say that that the weather kind of helped the Bears because footballs get slippery when it's raining, and there was a mist, kind of a misty rain that was coming down, and that kind of helped with the interception. But nonetheless, the Chicago Bears actually aren't doing so badly right now when it comes to their record. Although I think if you watch them, most people would agree that the way they've won is kind of by happenstance and mistake and error. And, I know you take a win no matter how you can get it. After all, I've been a White Sox fan all my life, so I'm kind of used to that approach. But the Bears do not look like a dominant team. Certainly, they're not going to be in the playoffs. They're not going to be going anywhere, but you never know. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this, Lynette? I think we're about out of time, right? We're
Yes.
closing out for the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been the morning call. It's been a bit of an abbreviated morning for a couple of reasons. We've had some technical problems. The good news is we're putting in a new system, so that should eliminate those problems. So ask you to tune in next Wednesday beginning at 6 a.m. for the morning call with Tom Dabertin, and keep it tuned all day, all week to WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. And there's lots of great programming coming up this morning. We have the Munster Chamber of Commerce and then the School City of Hammond. And don't forget JED TV this weekend with this Friday with all kinds of high school football games. It's just a great weekend for football. Go out and see a game. You can't see a game, watch it on JED TV and enjoy the weekend, folks. We'll see you right back here next week at 6 a.m. on the morning call. Have a great day.